Okay, guys, I want to bring up a few topics today in this discussion, and I hope you guys enjoy it. And I hope that many of you will kind of see what the difference is between the different beings on this earth. So, um, the topic and the stories I'm going to kind of touch on today has to do with uh, Sasquatch and giants, and that's two big things you might want to kind of, if you're interested in it, then stay tuned. If you're not, then don't stay tuned. There's really no reason, if you're not interested in these subjects, unless you're just out of curiosity clicking on this newscast or story. So let's go to what the giants are. Now, if you're looking at the actual biblical version of the giants, you're looking at the nephilim. Now, this has to do with the story when God's angels seen the daughters of man attractive on earth, and they decided to rebel and to come to the earth and take them as wives. And that's what the Bible talks about. That's what made the race of Nephilim. They're half angels and half human. Now, in the Bible, the parents of the Nephilim had to watch their children fight for 500 years. And that's a biblical story of it. But understanding these beings, as far as Nephilim or Nephilim, whatever you want to call them, understanding the longevity of life for a being on this earth that's biblical and traditional through many traditions throughout the world, you would probably have to really consider the fact of why they would be here in the year 2021. What factors would make that relevant to modern times? Now, we have tons of technologies. There's drones, there's cameras, there's government ops, there's satellites. All this stuff is being registered constantly. There's really nowhere nothing can hide on planet Earth anymore without being seen by something, whether it be government technology or personal technology. So the stakes have kind of changed for these type of beings. Now, given the stories from the past that I've read, these Nephilim, these hybrids they're like Achilles and they're like Hercules. So if you used to go back into Greek mythology, that's where these beings would rate. If you used to put them in a certain section and say, hey, what kind of beings are these? What category would they be in? Well, they'd be in the category of a type of demigods. Nearly indestructible, superhuman strength from their angelic fathers. The ability to reproduce would be another issue. So, the longevity of life for these beings would be, in Noah's time, you're looking at 800 years, and longer lives. These beings, being that they're half angel, would probably be a lot longer. We'd be talking, I hate to say it, but time, for an angel is not really relevant. I think that's something, and aging is not really relevant. They're in their best physical form. They never really change. So if we had a crossbreeding of these two, an interstellar being from the heavens and a human wife that was created in the Garden of Eden in the very beginning, and then went out through Seth and through Cain and that era, before the Great Flood, you would probably think that they would be, really basically they wouldn't age as much. Their human mother would give them DNA. It would depend on the structure of the being, how much they would get on a DNA dump from the one parent to the other. Imagine the angelic DNA would be a lot more prevalent in these beings. So, they would inherit some traits from their mother. I think that, since, Noah and everybody else were not demigods, they were created in the garden, and they had a life expectancy that God had engineered inside their DNA, so they would age at a certain rate. But these being a hybrid that was never really supposed to actually be here, and was never really in the plan for humanity, being from a heaven that's an eternity, the time of an angel and in the heavens and and the time on Earth are two totally different things. The Earth spins daily. You know, we really have to put in perspective how long that would be in the heavens, and you know, the life expectancy of a hybrid between these two beings would probably be, the date would be of longevity of life would be so much farther than what any of us could ever imagine. We probably don't have a scale that would even match what amount of how long their lifespan would be. So, you know, in the days of old, this is them. As far as living on planet Earth, I would say much more advanced mentally than any of us, much more advanced through technologies they've learned, genetic imprinting from their father, you know, the superhuman strength, the ability to survive in anything, you know, as an angel or a descendant from an angel, direct descendant, could be just basically chasing down the rabbit hole. They don't have to live on the Earth's surface. They could live inside the Earth. They could live around the Earth. They don't have to, you know, what limitations was given to the angels that came here, God had implemented on them, which is, you know, a star being or star people. And it's kind of like if you had, you know, your normal human trying to figure out a complex theory that even the smartest man in the world could never, you know, quite get. So I'd give you my take on it. My take is these creatures live in the ground. They've gone underground, and the reason for that is because being on the surface of the earth would basically interfere with man anyway. And from what I'm understanding from the ancient texts and from the modern news, that through battles and through real depression, the degradation of their society is the reason why. So let's dive into that a little bit. So that's today's topic. Pardon me, it's late and I've kind of, you know, just getting tired. Anyway, so if you put in context what the Paiute have said, and the Choctaw, and the Sioux, the Lakota people, and others. So when the beings that were here were called giants, they were just giants to them. They didn't know any different. They were the giants. And so the Sioux and Lakota talk about them being able to run up next to a buffalo and grab it with one arm. And the Choctaw, I read a story on that where they actually had defeated them in a battle. They were eating their children. And the Paiute out in California, we're talking about Death Valley, talking about the fact that they came on an inland ocean that used to go clear to California, Death Valley, and into Utah and through Nevada. And they came in ships first, and they were very advanced technology-wise people. To what I would consider, my studies show me that Paiute band was a part of the ancient Aztec Empire that was here in Utah prior to moving south. I talked to one of the native tribesmen out of Mexico in Guadalajara, and they told me about the 5 tribes down there, and when the Aztec invaded Mexico and South and Central America. So, you know, the Aztec are from here, Paraguay Valley in Utah, north of Parowan. One side was Aztec pottery, and the next side of the valley is Fremont pottery, which is backed by archaeologists. This is the stronghold of the Aztecs. So I probably lump in, because they do speak an Aztecian dialect, and there was a break off between the Paiute, the Shoshone, the Utes, and the Comanches. They were the original Aztecs, and this great empire that was here before Comanchuria took over, which is an Aztec empire in a later date, the 1700s. So the Paiute at one time had encountered these people, these beings, and they were huge and beautiful, which you'd expect through an half angelic being. And they came in ships, and they were advanced. They traded. They were great friends. Their society flourished. They did fantastic with the inland ocean. They were able to catch fish and continue their way of life. until things changed on the earth. We had a climatic shift. The oceans dried up. The inland ocean dried up, left a small lake there in Nevada, I think Nevada, California. And anyway, their society started to plummet. So war broke out between the Paiute, which would be Aztecian dialect, which would be the Aztec Empire, which would warrant the reason why they beat them so badly. The giants were beat so badly by the Paiute. Well, this war broke out for a very long time. From the stories I read, in battles with these giants, the Paiute would shoot their arrows in battle, and they would jump and grab the arrow and turn around and shoot right back at the Paiute. And there was even a story I read that the Paiute would get killed in battle, and the giants would drag them off to consume them because they had lost their ability to harvest meat. And you imagine somebody that's 900 pounds would probably consume a lot of protein. So the lack of resources in the desert creeping in, they were probably in some pretty big destitute at that time. Now they were also, their stories that they went underground. I'm just saying this from what I've understood, that they had the ability to leave the earth. So flying saucers, whatever you want to call it, which would be totally up that realm, because they are star beings and all that. And there was some actual angels that asked to go back before God flooded the earth, and from what I've read, and they were unable to do so. God said, no, you this is your punishment. You're here for an eternity. You're not leaving the earth. You're bound to the earth forever for coming down here and breeding the daughters of man. So the Paiute finally did get, and you got to remember, the Paiute were the Ute. They could breed faster. Their lives are shorter. They were able to create more warriors faster. So, a rich empire could produce more children. And it's just it was a war of attrition. Even with an advanced being, even as an angelic being, if there's too great a numbers against that one individual, and the resources are depleted, in the area due to climatic shifting, if they have no way to escape and get away, which there would have been other tribes in California along the coast, this probably didn't turn out real well for them, because it turned cannibalistic prior to these battles due to resource expenditure and the climatic shift. So it makes perfect sense. They're half humans, so they took advantage of using the Paiute slash Aztec of ancient times as a food source, because they didn't really consider them to be an angelic being. Well, we know about the Lovelock Cave, the stories of Lovelock Cave, how the Paiute finally did defeat the giants in Lovelock Cave, burned them alive inside the cave and all that stuff. But they did ask them to surrender. If they quit eating them, they'd let them surrender, and they refused. But when society breaks down, especially in a foreign land, against an enemy that has, the Utes and the Paiutes and the Shoshone were some very physically fit people compared to modern man. These people, like the Comanche, which is left over of the Aztec Empire, here in the lower 48 states, they could actually ride a horse full blast and flip an arrow off underneath the horse's neck. And these people are very, very, very warlike. So you figure, eventually they would probably gain the upper hand on anybody. So I do believe in these stories. Now, the Choctaw, the story I read about the Choctaws is they actually defeated them there. They were eating their children. And I think it was pretty much the same thing. They were being bred out. They were losing the territory they had conquered and lived in these empires throughout the Western United States and the Eastern United States. And eventually, it catches up. So you take the mound builders. Even Lincoln said there's giants in the mounds. We'll get into that later. A lot more I have to tell you about that. But, whenever something happens like this, there's always going to be a cultural breakdown in any society, whether it be ancient or modern. We've seen this over time and time again, And if you don't believe in giants, what the Choctaw said, they admitted to it. But I'll finish the story. Sorry, it's late. But they chased them. They were eating the children, and they found out where they were going. So the Choctaw had a little more advanced weaponry. They started getting muskets from the white colonials and the traders. So the warriors hunted them down and got to their village, and they killed every one of them. Just massacred them all with the new technology. You got to figure, the days of old with the angelic beings. These things lived for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. They'd been through a lot. Imagine they were scarred to pieces with battle wounds from everything, and their reproduction level was so slow, compared to ours. They could not reproduce like we would ever do as humans that lived under 100 years. So, same thing with the Choctaws in their day. They defeated them, wiped them out. Now, I read another story about encounters on the plains and explorers, the raising the hand between two parties, when they encountered each other, was like this. It wasn't like this. It was like this, 5 fingers out. The reason being is what I read. I was actually lucky enough to get a hold of one of the documents and read it online. Was that when they seen the 5 fingers between the other party at a distance, just like what happened to Norsemen, they'd have to stand there and wait for hours so they'd know they weren't tricking them and trying to come and kill them. And again, there's Norsemen history on, wondering if someone's something they're not. They're saying they're not. There's a very big threat here throughout the globe at that time. So if they seen 6 fingers, they would run. Everything they had, they would drop and run. They knew they had to get out of the area, because what they were seeing was the nephilim, was the giants. So the giant would lift his hand, the group of giants, and there'd be 6 fingers. If they seen the 6 fingers, it was game on. They had to. These things catch them within seconds. They knew they'd be ready for battle at that time. Imagine how scary this is. And I've heard a lot of stories about this type of being. Now, I don't think it's the howlers. I really, on the Navajo reservation, I have a theory of the howlers. That Bone Tomahawk, the show that came out, kind of, they admitted that they added that voice box for fear factor type thing, or to add to the show. But realistically, the howlers are there. A lot of information I heard here in Cedar about the howlers. What I've experienced west of here has not been the howlers. They're more along the line of something very big and something very loud. And, the graves that I found out there, one being dug up and the other fake grave, with probably 1,000-year-old grave laying there. The ground was hard as a rock, or just you've never been disturbed in hundreds and hundreds of years, and there's a grave set up. Then, the one body was way bigger than a man. It was dug up from one year to the next. That would be a different story. Now Sasquatch is huge. There's so much involved in a Sasquatch. This is ancient legend galore. Possibility of Sasquatch still being here in the Americas is there. I do think that their numbers are depleted. From what I understand, they are a different being here. They exist. They existed all the way down to the Mississippi, and all the way across the West Coast and East Coast, and all the way to Alaska. They do exist. I don't know how many are actually left, in my opinion. I think a lot of the height of the Sasquatch was through the 1800s and into the early 1900s. 1990 was when things started changing with the advancement in technologies. I do have some stories I could share with you about what happened to a few of them on the reservations that I heard, and a couple really bad encounters with an Apache attack helicopter that I was told from a good friend back in the 90s. Early 90s. So there may have been some real determination for, hunting down these beings and eliminating from the forefront of modern, man. Maybe it's a story they just don't want to know is true for some reason, which I can imagine. There's a multitude of reasons why. History is always written by individuals and documented by individuals, but that's just documentation and written history of people that only know so much or see so much. And if you buck the narrative like we've seen in the past, you're considered a conspiracy theorist or a weirdo. And that really isn't the case. It's, especially in the Americas. You had an invasion from Europe. You had an invasion of people that had a colonial type idea of things, and things like that didn't go bump in the night. And we are following a Christian belief and a Christian Bible, and it included the giants. It did, but like Brigham Young said, he ran into him. One of them thought it was Cain. Brigham Young was a big believer in that and the haunting of Timpanogos. And I'm a huge believer of Timpanogos, backside Timpanogos being haunted. Just complete believer in it. I've heard some stories and been personally involved up in things up in that area as a young man. So thanks for checking our channel. I'll do another video shortly. I'm trying to do a spree of videos, just tonight, trying to get as many as I can on air and discussing different topics so I can start a discussion with you guys. I'm sorry about my tongue. I do have bad teeth lately, and it's really, getting old sucks, and it really just irritates the mouth with the broken teeth. But, and it's I think 1 o'clock in the morning. I can't even tell. I mean, it's really late. My objective is to get as many videos as I can out. Yeah, it's 12:49. Very tired. I mean, look at my eyes. I'm beat. But I have to get these stories out to you guys, and I drank a lot of coffee. I want to just move forward, and I'm running a news organization too at the same time, and 2 separate organizations, and Western States Outdoors. So I'll get back with you with some more information on some stories I've read and I've seen and I've actually had encounters with. So thanks for watching, guys. Another video uploaded, and have a good night, and I'll talk to you soon.